Okay, so Goriana joins me now from California. Goriana, tell us a little bit about you, what sort of work you do, and why you decided that you needed to tell better stories.
Hi, Steve. So I'm electrical engineer that is switching path and starting my own business as a facilitator, workshopper, master. And I'm building my own website at the moment. Want to tell my story out and connect with future clients. So
Hmm.
that's why I bought the storyteller tactics and the archetypes so I can deliver my
Mm.
story better to my clients.
And where do you feel like you're struggling most? What do you feel is your biggest problem?
Uh, my biggest problem at the moment is putting my story to be uh, to have hooks for
Mm.
the customers.
Okay, well, that's good. We can work on that. So, if you were to describe what you feel like you're doing in terms of what are you giving your customers when they come to you? What is it that you give them they can't do for themselves?
I help them have uh,
Excuse me.
meetings that are uninterrupted, meetings that everyone on the meeting is involved.
Yep.
Because a lot of times when it comes to brainstorming or opinions of other people on the meetings, one will dominate and a lot of people will just keep it quiet. So
Yeah.
I will help everyone to be involved with quiet meetings, but
Mm.
everyone is involved in the meeting and putting their thoughts out loud with sticky notes.
Yeah.
And um, I help with also retrospectives of what the company was doing before, what they can improve, and
Now you
every
said you,
like any industry
yeah,
also.
yeah, yeah. Well, this is the interesting thing is that when you start talking about bad meetings, right, where people don't listen or they don't talk or they don't feel they can talk or they're wasting their time. We've all every industry, I think, every workplace,
Yes.
everyone knows what bad meetings are like. So if you can say, okay, I'm here to do away with bad meetings and all the things that involves, well, fantastic. Do you work in face to face as well or online or a mixture of both?
Both, both.
Okay, yes.
So it can
Um,
be virtual meetings and also face to face. I like face to face more, but I should have both.
well, it's interesting. Before the pandemic, I didn't do any online um, work at all, and I was vaguely aware that I should, but I didn't. I didn't like it. So I just like working. And so my entire um, client base was all built around face to face training. And what the pandemic did was it obviously forced us all to work on online where we could. So actually, it was a really good wake up call, really good discipline. It was awful. It was a terrible time, and I hated it. But like so, there's an when the first card that you see, the first of the main cards you see in Storyteller Tactics is that one called the Dragon and the City, where you're thinking about a thing that comes at you unexpectedly. What do you do about it? And I always think that the pandemic is a very good example because we all went through that period where not many of us were ready for that particular dragon. I mean, some people were, most of
Yes.
us weren't. And for many of us, it was really bad, but also there was elements of that which were really good. So it's really what was your experience? Where were you in the pandemic? Where were you? What were you doing?
Well, that's when I moved to the US, so I couldn't find a job, and that's when
Hmm.
I started my digital marketing agency just to
Ah.
keep some momentum and
Mm.
be productive. Because even that I'm electrical engineer, I couldn't find a job
Mm.
because I'm a military spouse as well. So
Oh,
not a
okay.
lot of companies like military spouses because we move. If the military
Ah.
says, "Oh, you have to move in a month or 2 months or 3 months,"
Yes.
the government is
Yeah.
protecting us that we have to move with our husbands.
Mm. Yes. Yes. Yes.
And a lot of companies do not like that. And also it's challenging when you have your husband deployed or something and you have a baby or kids
Mm. Mm.
uh, to do
Yeah.
electrical engineering because it's night
Mm.
shifts, day shifts, all everything
Mm.
is changing all the time.
Mm.
My
Mm.
electrical controls engineering. So that's why I take this path right now and put
Mm.
all my experience that I had with a lot of meetings and
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
project uh, management so I can help other companies
Mm.
be able to uh, have less meetings, but
Mm.
productive meetings.
Yes. There's something. I mean, there's
So,
something really interesting that we do. I think, and a lot of people do this when you either make a career change. I mean, this is from electrical engineering to digital marketing to running your own sort of facilitation consultancy in business. So there's lots of changes there. And I think what's really interesting is you can kind of be completely involved in the day to day of that particular like electrical engineering, all those experiences, without ever sort of stepping back and going, well, what do I know at a higher level here? Well, I know how to organize people. I know how to to communicate clearly. So all those things are really interesting. Um, I often think when people come to write, one of the previous discussions I had was with somebody around a job interview. What do you do about stories in a job interview? And it's difficult because when you come to write your CV or your job application, you
yeah,
start talking about your high level skills that you've acquired, which is fantastic because that's what people are employing you for, is for those kind of high level skills. Um, but you forget to remind people when you're talking at high level, whether you're talking about engineering or facilitation or marketing, whatever, it doesn't matter. When you're talking at that kind of high level up there, it's very hard for someone to see what you mean unless they are exactly at the same level as you and they are able to talk at high level with you because they know what they're doing too. So when you're talking to someone who doesn't know what they're doing, their experience is way down here. And so in order to reach that person, and this applies to your web copy, it applies to your social media content, it applies to your conversation, when you want to reach the customer who's down here and say, hey, it's okay, I've got the skills, right? For example, and you drop down into a story which is about a single time you did something. And that's so that is the easiest, quickest, fastest way to start thinking about, okay, I need to get, for example, I need to get web copy, in your case, website copy, I need to get social media content to talk about what I do, to talk about my skills. Well, I think the trick here is to think, okay, there's a level at which I'm my skills are what are valuable because I've got this wisdom up here, right? But it's very hard to sell that because people can't see what I mean, right? And also, the other problem with selling at high level is other people will say the same. So other consultants in the same field as you will all say, "Well, I'm an experienced facilitator. I work in an inclusive way. I'm very agile." Yeah, they'll all say the same
yeah,
thing because they're all saying this high level stuff, and therefore your message will just blend in with everybody else's message, right? And me, the potential customer, I have no way of telling you from yeah
yeah,
you from your competitor. So that's why it's really important. Two things are really important. One is to be able to drop down into the single moment. Say, for example, when I was working with X company, they had these terrible meetings where, so you drop into a little moment of a story to show your high level skill. And that's basically why I think storytelling is so useful, because when you drop into the single moment, I walked in the room and I could tell the minute I walked in that the atmosphere was terrible. Right. So whatever it is, whatever the story is you're telling about the bad meeting, we're in the moment with you if you tell the story. And then, okay, now two things happen. First thing is I go, oh, I can see what you mean, because you're painting a little picture, like a little movie scene, like with a camera, right? You're painting a little picture, and I go, oh, yeah, I've been in meetings like that, and I can see what you mean. And then the second thing that happens when you start talking about the movie scene, if you're clever and if you tap into the emotional picture as well as the physical picture, everyone was getting very frustrated because, right, one guy was just being rude, right? This woman was on her phone and she was on her phone the whole time. And it was really frustrating, and I was getting really frustrated. So once you tap into the kind of the emotional picture as well, Well, not only can I see what you mean. Oh, excuse me a second. I'm just on a call. Can I call you back tomorrow? Lovely, thank you. Sorry, I should put my phone on silent. Do apologise.
It's
Okay,
okay.
it's on airplane now. Okay, so yeah, so basically, when you drop into that moment, you give us, I see what you mean, I know how that feels. And then we're kind of much closer to being connected than if you're talking at the high level. Now, the card which you may have already come across, which is the kind of the quickest way into this. Now, there are lots of quick ways to do this, but one of the quickest ways to do it is with there's a card in the style section at the right at the end of the deck called, appropriately enough, called Movie Time. Right, and
Yes.
that's about framing. Yeah, exactly. So that's about taking the moment that you think, okay, here's the skill I'm here's the skill I'm selling, high level skill. For example, drop down into the story, and that movie time will allow you to think, okay, well, I've got to give them some action, right? So the ingredients are action, emotion, and meaning. So I've got to give them some action, people doing a thing in a time and place, something you could point a camera at. I'm going to give them some emotion, so we understand what's at stake, and then I'm going to give them the meaning. Okay, so this is why I don't do meetings like that anymore. Okay, so that's quite interesting. Now that's the kind of the easy, simple model for very very basic storytelling, and in
Yes.
order to
I
help you,
have a question
go on,
about this
yeah,
one. Uh, can I start the story
mhm.
with imagine having a meeting that you're involved, like the positive, start with the positive. I don't want the start with the negative feelings.
You can. The
So,
thing is, okay, so I said there's the way to get from the big high level stuff to the little picture, from big picture to little picture. The quickest way is to say, for example, and to talk about a thing in the past. Yep. So,
okay.
for example, and you talk about, but the other way, which is equally good, you just hit it, is just imagine. Right. So you say, just imagine you go into a meeting and okay, X Y Z happens. Okay. Both of them are the same. One is, for example, should be a real thing that happened in the past, right? Just
Yes.
imagine is something that maybe hasn't happened yet, but they work the same. They paint a picture, you can tap into the emotion, you can take out the meaning. So, yes, both of those will work fine. When you're thinking about, when you're trying to translate this kind of high level experience that you've got into little picture stories, because you can get loads of stories this
Yeah.
way, yeah, this card will really help you to find the story in the first place. Emotional dashboard, right? It's one of the orange explore cards, and the reason why this is so useful is it's all about starting with the emotion, positive or negative, doesn't really matter. So I felt really proud when I came away from a facilitation. Okay, because okay, or I was really frustrated in the middle of that meeting because right, and so that allows you to discover to find out where the story should be. And typically speaking, generally speaking, the strongest emotion, positive or negative, yeah, well, first of all, it'll stick in your memory, right? If you didn't feel any particular emotion one way or the other, chances are you won't remember it.
Yes.
Okay. So an average drive to work with no bad traffic, you don't even remember it. A terrible drive to work where you get stuck in traffic for an hour, yeah, and you miss an important, yeah, okay, you remember
Yes.
that one. Okay, so emotion's very powerful. It takes you because it helps you pick things up from memory, but
You
also
connect it with the memory.
yes, but also you connect with other people. So if you talk about, okay, so I'll tell you what's a really really powerful story, because it's so emotionally strong, and because it's a story people don't often tell. So what's a really powerful story is the story of when you got something wrong. when you made a mistake, and so you assumed somebody was, I don't know, you assumed something that turned out to be wrong, and it was very embarrassing, and you made a mistake in front of other people, right? Well, that happens.
Yes,
And
it does
yeah, oh
happen.
yes, it does happen. Um, okay, so when we do that, when you tell a story about that, about making a mistake, the embarrassment's so powerful that other people can feel embarrassed for you, which is really interesting. But then, of course, the key thing here is you then, in this instance, you talk about what you learned from that mistake so you won't make that mistake again. Um, and two things happening there. First of all, it's a good story because it's embarrassing and an emotion sticks in the memory, gets attention, all these sort of things. But secondly, you're turning it to your advantage by saying, so what I learned from this is never assume blah 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 blah. Okay, so so those mistake stories can be really hello cat. Those mistake stories can be really
Yes, she
powerful.
just drew.
Yes. Okay, so that's my sort of first thought about getting your expertise, and what you'll discover as you go through that process of turning the kind of the big picture into the little picture stories. You've got lots of stories, so you'll have a little picture story for every single client you ever worked with. Yeah. You've got a little picture story for every mistake you ever made and learned from. Okay. The other way you can do this, and this, I mean, we're at the kind of pulling ideas together stage rather than actually writing ideas down. So pulling ideas together. Another thing you can do, I think, sometimes is it's almost like starting with your CV and thinking, okay, these are all the skills that I can bring. Right? You make a list of all your skills. And then you think, okay, I'm going to make a list of all the benefits that I bring. So uninterrupted meetings, meetings where people are involved, meetings where all ideas come out on the table and everyone is able to think out loud, retrospectives that identify the real problem and fix things that were going wrong. So you could write again a list of all the benefits you bring. So you've got a list of your skills on a piece of paper and a list of all your benefits that you can offer a client. And after each one, you write, for example, right? And think, right, if I'm saying I can do this, if I'm saying I've got this skill, I better be able to back it up and to back it up with a story. Then I think what you can do once you've done that, I think you can then start to think, okay, well, you'll have a wealth of stories, and anybody watching this, listening to this as well, you have a wealth of stories. You have all these skills, you have all these things you do for people, all these benefits you bring, and you have all the lessons you've learned, usually by making mistakes. And in each one, you should be able to tell a little story. And there's another interesting thing you can do is either open up your email or your Slack or your LinkedIn and look at your messages, people you're in communication with, and think, right, what have I done for this person? What have I done that's useful for this person? What have I done that would make this person uh, think highly of me and my work? Now, do you have any testimonials at this stage for your work from happy customers?
I'm just starting, but I do
Mm-hmm.
have people that I helped
Mm-hmm.
even
Yep.
without my business that I
Yes.
helped like guided them how to do their meetings or like how to handle themselves in the meeting, like how to
Yep.
present. So
Okay.
I will just ask those friends that I helped to write testimonials
Very
for
good.
now.
Okay. Yes, I think. Look, well, listen, that is a really positive start. Okay. And then as you build up customers, I mean, when I started out so I had a kind of fairly safe job working in the BBC, and I left that and went set myself up in business. Interestingly, I also set up initially as a facilitator, so doing the same sort of thing. And what you very quickly realize is the most powerful story you can tell is the story of a happy customer. Yeah. And even better if that person tells the story for you in the form of a testimonial. But then I was in the same position as you. You was thinking, well, I don't have any, or I don't have any customers because I'm just starting out. What do you do? And I think there are two ways you can approach this. The first one you've identified, which is, when have I done something similar for other people in my last job? Right. So, okay, it's not exactly what I'm doing now, but it's similar. So when have I done something similar? And get them to talk about it. But the other thing you can do, and I did a little bit of this, is to work. You have to work for free for a little bit, and the free bit basically is how you gain. And it's not free because obviously the what you're saying to the person who proposed. I mean, I did work when I started out. I worked with some charities and helped facilitate their meetings. And I said, I'm doing this for free because you're a charity, but I will need you to write me a testimonial afterwards if you're happy with my work. So it's not totally free. Okay. But this is something really interesting again, because so we've talked about how you turn your experience and skills into stories. Okay, well, that's by dropping down into the moment. The next thing I think is really useful is to talk about turning existing customers or contacts, in this case, because they're not yet really customers, but they're contacts. Okay, how do you turn them into stories? In particular, we're talking about testimonials. Yeah. So there's a card in the deck, which I think is good for this. Let me see if I can find it. It's the card. It's in the orange section, and it's called Social Proof. Right. Now, this is a very powerful concept within storytelling generally, and it's the idea that when we don't know what to do, we look at other people. That's why it's called social proof. So if we're not sure what to do, if someone else is doing something, we're influenced by that, particularly if that person is famous or rich or in some way high status and they're doing something, we go, ooh. Or if there are thousands of people doing that thing, we go, ooh. So the social proof for storyteller tactics, for example, in our advertising, we will say, okay, we've sold 200,000 copies of Storyteller Tactics. That's social proof from data, right? Well, 200,000 people they can't all be stupid. Yeah, some of them might be, but they can't all be stupid. So that's first thing. And the second thing we say is people who work in Google, Meta, the Rolls-Royce, the BBC, Toyota, Netflix, Disney, they use these cards. So that's also a form of social proof. So what we're doing in those adverts is saying, look at these people. So this is a really important part of selling, which you're needing to do. So on the back of the social
That's how I
proof,
got the deck.
Very good. Okay, so there's a little section on the bottom about testimonials. Right, if you ask your colleagues, friends, people you worked with, to write a review, they might do a good job, but they might actually just go, well, she's very good, 5 stars, thumbs up. Right? And that's nice, but it's not very helpful because it doesn't give me any kind of picture in my head. When I'm reading that, I get no picture at all about why are you any good. So it's very forgettable. So the trick it suggests on this card is to say to people, okay, when we worked together, was there one thing you really liked about the way we worked? Was there one moment where you thought, okay, yeah, I'm in safe hands here? Okay, that will prompt people to tell a little story about a single moment in time. And that's dynamite. My advice on this, by the way, it doesn't say this on the card, but just as a practical point, is my advice would be, if you ask people in writing, say in email, to do all this writing for you, 9 out of 10 people won't do it because they're busy. And that's just not, you can ask somebody on LinkedIn to write a recommendation for you. 9 times out of 10, they don't. Okay. Because we're busy. So what you do instead, I think, is say, look, have you got 10 minutes? Can we have a very quick chat? And 15 minutes, get on a call. You ask the kind of questions that they're on the social proof card. Okay. You write the answers down. Yep. You write down everything that person says. Yes. And then you take that away after the call and you type it up into 30 or 40 word version, not exactly verbatim, but very, very close to what they
Version
said.
of it. Yeah.
Yeah. And then you email it to that person and say, are you okay for me to use that quote? Yes. And you try to make it into a little story. I was so delighted the way Goliana handled our group. We had a really difficult boss who wouldn't shut up, but she managed to get every voice in the room heard. Right? Okay, perfect. Dynamite. Boom. So you get that in quote, you send it to the person. Are you okay for me to use this? And they hopefully go yes, or change this or whatever. But either way, you've done the work, right? And they come back and go, yeah, it's okay. And then boom, you print it. You get it on the website. Ideally with a photograph of the person who's saying the thing, right? Because we read faces. Okay, so that's a little dynamite place to start. I'm conscious of time, and I want to get onto the archetypes as well. So is there any? So we've talked about turning your skills into your big picture skills into little picture stories, and we've talked about turning your customers and contacts into testimonials. Right. Is there anything else? So we're talking in the sort of sales story areas there, and there is a recipe card you've probably seen called Stories That Sell.
Yes.
Have you seen that card? Yeah. So that's quite a good.
It's right in front of me.
There you go. Okay. Well,
I have
listen.
Made all the recipes into little.
Have you?
Yeah.
You're such an engineer. I'll tell you what I think is really interesting. There's a card in the deck that the engineers, among our customers, seem to really like, right? And it's that one. It's the flowchart card.
Yes.
Yeah. So that one really appeals to engineers. I love working with engineers. I'll tell you why. I'm not an engineer. My dad and my son are both kind of very much they're engineers, but it just passed me by. But I love working with engineers because 9 times out of 10 they'll tell you they can't or won't or don't tell stories, right? And then when you get them onto a tricky problem they've solved, or a time that their machine broke down, or whatever, or the stupid customer who breaks things, yes. When you get them on that, they just start telling stories like bam, bam, bam. I love working with engineers. However, what I would say is some engineers and others have pointed out that there's a problem, right? The problem with so these recipe cards. So Stories That Sell is the closest. Recipe is the wrong analogy. Right? They're not really recipes. They are more, because a recipe, you get 5 ingredients in exact quantities. You mix them in a bowl, stick them in the oven, and you get a cake. Right. Well, storytelling isn't like that. So what I would say with the recipe cards is think of them more like a buffet at a wedding. So you go up to the table. There are 5 dishes on the table, right? And there's fish, and there's chicken, and there's vegetable, whatever. There's 5 dishes on the table, and you take as much or as little as you want from each of the 5. So they're not recipes; they're buffets. And that's a mistake that I made when I was writing the cards, to not realise that. So yeah. So some people look at the recipe card and go, "I can't use this. What do I do? Do I do every single one of those tactics, or do I do? Where's my story at the end?" It's not like that. So there's it's like a buffet. Anyway, but Stories That Sell is a very useful one for you to think about when you're writing those stories for your website. Okay, one other thing you mentioned was social media, getting stories out on social media. And you talked about you talked about being able to find hooks for stories. Yes. Okay, well, there is a card. There's a few cards that
the hooks.
Story hooks, you've seen that one.
Story hooks, yeah.
So this is about getting the headline right. Okay, so story hooks is a good one to look at. However, There's also it's also worth looking at things like so I think here we are, secrets and puzzles, right? That's a good one, because anything that's you put something out in front of somebody and say, what's the secret of? Yeah. Why is it that five why is it that five clever people in a room can turn into one stupid meeting? Well, it's a little
Yeah.
puzzle. Yeah? And the puzzle is, well, because of dynamics and because of all sorts of things, bad management, whatever. So why can five clever people in a room make one stupid meeting? Is a kind of hook, because it's a little
Yes.
puzzle. I'll tell you what else is quite a nice hook. I think it's quite interesting to hook on rule breaking. So there's a card called Rules, Cheats, and Rebels, which is about what are you in this situation? Are you the one who's going to come on and enforce the rules and stop the bad behaviour? Or maybe you're going to come in and break the old way of doing things. Yeah, the old rules are the boss speaks first and the boss speaks longest. Yes, and the newest person in the room stays quiet. No, I'm going to break those rules because I'm going to be a rebel. And anyone who breaks rules is immediately gets our attention, because we're trying to figure out, is that person good or bad? So if you
That
set
was
your
me all the
yeah,
time.
okay, the rebel facilitator.
Yes.
Okay,
I
okay.
actually like that.
Well. Listen, that's a lovely point at which to segue into the archetypes. So we've covered quite a lot of ground there in terms of yes. The other thing. Sorry, the last thing I was going to say in terms of hooks for social media. Social media is a very emotional medium, and so a really interesting little discipline I think you can get into when you're working with social media, whether it's video or text or Instagram, whatever it is, doesn't matter, YouTube, whatever. Ask yourself this question. When somebody has finished my post, whether they're looking at a photograph, watching a short video, reading some text, whatever, when somebody finishes my post, which emoji would they send me in response? Right? So are they going to be sending you back a smiling, happy, like, have you given them joy? Have you given them wisdom? Have you made them angry? Have you made them shocked? Have you made them surprised? Have you made them feel cleverer? Yes, if you're having an emotional impact on somebody, then you can almost picture the emoji they would send you back. Yes, my favourite one, not surprisingly, is the smiling nerd. Now, the smiling nerd emoji, thumbs up, or actually, I quite like the saluting. Yeah, job done. I like that one. So so when I'm finishing this video and people are watching it on YouTube, what I want them to be thinking is, I'm a bit smarter now than I was before, right? So I'm wanting them to send me a nerd emoji or a job done, whatever. Okay, I'm not trying to make them laugh.
Yes.
Okay, but I am trying to make them feel something, and I'm not trying to make them feel better informed. I'm trying to make them feel useful. Yeah, like that's the okay, smarter, useful. Okay, but it's a really nice test, and think, well, okay, so I've just written this post about facilitation. What's the emoji that people are going to respond with? And if you can't think of one, then it's probably not, you've not got the hook
Mm.
right. Yeah. So
Yeah.
you should be trying to make an emotional connection with the audience with your story. Either positive emotion, which is humor, surprise, awe, wonder, nerdiness, usefulness, togetherness, nostalgia. These are all very powerful positive emotions. Or you can play with the negative: anger, frustration, outrage, yeah, disgust. All of these are really powerful emotions. Now you can decide, based on what you were saying earlier. My hunch will be you want to go positive.
Yes.
Okay.
Because everyone out there is going with the negative,
I
and I
know.
don't like a lot of negative
No,
feelings.
no.
So,
It's a hard energy to work with, negative energy, and
yeah.
particularly as a facilitator, where I'm going to invite you into my team, and you could really mess things up. So I don't really want angry Goyana is not who I want to bring in.
Yeah.
Whereas smart Goyana, empathetic, inclusive, togetherness Goyana, I like the sound of her, but outraged Goyana is probably not for me. So yes, I think you're right. Okay, now so it brings us nicely into the archetypes box. Now, this is a bit of a kind of addition to storyteller tactics. So the archetypes, as you know, is a smaller pack, and the just for people watching who've not come across archetypes, or they've heard the word and they don't really know what it means. So archetypes are like characters who we instantly recognize when we come across them, because there's something deep and universal in them and in us. So for example, the archetype of um, so the archetypes are kind of these basic characters, and they appear in fiction, but they also appear in life. So the archetype of the caregiver, for example, well, this is clearly a parent or mother or a father figure providing care for, could be an older brother or sister. But anyone who's grown up in our family, in other words, everyone, understands and recognizes a caregiver. And they also have a little bit of the caregiver in them as well. But equally, so another archetype is the rebel. Well, anyone who's ever been a teenager, yes, understands where the rebel is coming from. Okay, so that's what the archetypes are, and they allow us a way of understanding things in our lives that are unique to us and also universal. So the feeling of falling in love, yes, with your meeting your husband and falling in love, that feeling is uniquely yours, but it's also universal to everyone who's ever fallen in love. Right? So that's what the archetypes represent. It's like a way of putting a face on a thing that's very human, a part of us that's very human. The other way I like to think about the archetypes, and this came to me as I was writing them, is they're like the voices inside your head that are,
So many.
yeah, there's many of them. And the way I like to think of it is sometimes it's like you're driving a minibus down the road, right? But you've got 12 backseat drivers, 12 passengers in the back, and at any point, any of them could start shouting directions at you. So any of them could jump up and start shouting, or even grab hold of the steering wheel, right, and start taking over the journey. But also, sometimes the ones who need to shout up don't. So sometimes they're too loud, sometimes they're too quiet. Okay. So that's the way. That's how I think about them. But what in relation to what you need? So in the archetypes deck, just for people who haven't seen it, there are 12 archetype characters: the explorer, the artist, the magician, the sage, the rebel, the lover, the companion. So there are 12 characters, but also there are three kind of workshop cards, which are a bit like recipe cards, which allow you to use the archetypes for different things. So the first and obvious one is called Raise the Stakes, which is about just using the characters within a story to make the story more dramatic. So if you put a jester character into conflict with a ruler character, sparks are going to fly. Certainly, a rebel and a ruler are going to, they're going to disagree. Okay, so that's first one is called Raise the Stakes. In other words, make your story more dramatic. The second workshop is quite interesting, called The Way Ahead, and it's about thinking of these archetypes as life milestones on your journey through life. And so when you become, for example, when you become a manager instead of just you suddenly you've been promoted and you're managing the people you used to work alongside. Well, in terms of the archetypes, you've got to learn to use the ruler's voice rather than the companion's voice, because you were all once companions, but now you're now setting the rules. You
Mm.
can't carry on acting like one of the gang because you're not. So it's a way of thinking about your development, the way ahead. But I think the one that's probably most useful to you for the 10 minutes or so we've got left is the brand one, of which archetype helps you identify your brand. So when you've looked through the archetype cards, are there any there that strike you as being good for your brand? Excuse me.
I do like the rebel.
Okay.
Yes. And I forgot which one was it. Was it the explorer? I was just going over it, and it was
Yes.
just and hero and guide. Actually,
Yes.
hero and
Yeah.
guide was the first one because I will not be the hero in your meeting. You're the
Correct.
hero. I will guide you to your meeting.
Correct. So you're not Luke. You're Yoda.
Yes, I'm Yoda.
Yes. Yeah.
So
Okay. Well, so
one
let's.
was hero and guide,
Mm,
and that I wanna explain to them that I'm the guide, but
mm,
you will be the hero. Like if I'm
mm,
talking to a manager in some
mm.
company, I will explain you will be the hero. I'm not the hero. So I will
Exactly
be
right.
selling also that to them.
Yes. And I think this is very good. And also, all right. So we are interested in other people, but we're more interested in ourselves. And we're so in other words, if you're saying I'm really clever, I'm really good, I'm brilliant, it doesn't. Whereas if I say, what do you need? Oh, okay. So I think I can help you with that. It's a completely different conversation. And people are much more willing to have that conversation than to listen to you telling us how brilliant you are. So yes, I agree. Okay, so the hero guide way of thinking is okay. So you're a guide. What kind of guide are you? So okay, you maybe going to be say well. If you say well, and so you've gone through them already. And what I suggest doing is go through all the 12 characters and go, well, okay, you then sort them out into, well, maybe got a strong rebel, maybe a strong explorer, not really a lover in this case. Maybe there's a bit of companion in there. Not really an artist. So you start just sifting through and end up with 2 or 3 strong ones. And then you got 2 choices. You can either say, right, I'm a kind of hybrid. I'm a bit of rebel and a bit of explorer. Okay, what does that look like? And more importantly, what's the tone of voice I use? If I'm a rebel explorer, a kind of Lara Croft, yeah, sort of Lara Croft type figure. Well, what's my tone of voice? When I speak to people, what do I give them? What do I say to them? And then also you can start getting into things like even down to, well, what's the color scheme on my website if I'm the kind of the rebel explorer? Because it does make a difference. And so if you're the
It
ruler,
does.
now, if you're Hugo Boss and those kind of ruler brands, and LinkedIn is another kind of sage brand, well, it's a different kind of look overall. So listen, that's a very sort of quick rattle through. So I would say with archetypes, um, have a look through. I think all 3 of the workshop cards. So raise the stakes, the way ahead, and build your brand. Look at them all and think, and do them all once with Explorer as your chosen
Hmm.
archetype, and then do them all again with Rebel as your chosen archetype. And by doing it twice, you'll start to get a feel of which do you think is the strongest brand. And there are 2 questions to ask here, really. The first question is, where do you feel most comfortable? So which one really speaks to you? So it may be that the Rebel speaks to you more. Okay. So which one speaks to you? Because you've got to enjoy doing this stuff. You've
Yes.
got to enjoy being your brand.
Hmm.
The second question, though, is, and it's probably the more important question, is what do my customers need from me? Do they need a rebel or do they need an explorer? And I don't know the answer to that because it'll depend on,
Yep.
yeah. And also it'll be interesting. Some customers will be very risk averse.
I really like this card.
Oh yeah, do you like the color scheme on it?
Yes.
The little color
I was
flash.
like,
No,
wait,
no,
what is this?
yeah. Well, he's a magician. He has a little magic sheen because he's a magician.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but it's interesting because you were connecting like on the back
Yes.
also
Yes.
the ruler, the artist, and everything,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
it's
Yes. So what you can do with those 12 is, like, on the back of each card, it suggests some combinations. Well, you can make your own combinations as well. The other thing as well, which is really cool, I like doing as well, is you can kind of, and in fact, these exercises, I think they're in the vault for the archetypes. So you can do things like you can kind of reverse engineer and think, okay, so take someone like Mark Zuckerberg. Which mixture of archetypes is he? Well, he's a little bit of magician. He's a little bit of sage. He used to be a bit of a rebel because he was an upstart, and now he's maybe a bit of a ruler. So you can start taking real people and seeing which archetypes work in them. And yeah, there's a lot you can play around with these. Listen, I'm going to need to wrap up because I've got another customer joining me at 6 o'clock. So what I'd love to see, as I say, I'll post this video up on YouTube, and I'll do a quick summary before I do that. So, but we've talked about turning your skills and experience into little stories, and we've talked about turning your customer contacts, previous contacts, into testimonials, and we've talked about exploring your kind of hooks for social media, but also exploring your brand voice with the
yes.
archetypes. So what I would love, if you can, is whether you'd be happy to update. So I'll post on the Slack, but if you're happy to update with some links to your current website, but also to new additional material you keep adding to it when you're adding extra stories, customer stories, your own experience stories, add those as well, so we can see them. We can see how you're getting on.
Sounds good.
Brilliant.
I
Okay.
will publish my website today, what I already have,
Yep.
and you can see the transformation in a week.
Well, I tell you what, keep a record, keep a screenshot of the old one as well. Yes,
Yes,
so we can see before and after. That's great. Yeah, publish now, right? And then we can see before and after when you start to add the stories.
sounds good.
Gorian, thank you very much for your time today. It's been really lovely to meet you. And
It was a
best
pleasure, Steve.
best of luck with the website and the social media stories. I'm sure you'll have a lot of fun.
Thank you. Have a good day.
Thank you. Bye bye now.
Bye.